This year's been a great year for water. The drawback to it is it has significantly impacted the areas I normally like to fish for carp. Most of the reservoirs are too high. There's not areas around the edges that you can really fish them. It's very weedy. So anyway, I headed out to this reservoir. I knew this one was low. I took my 6-weight out. These are a little bit smaller fish, still standard, 12 feet with 4 feet of tippet. And the 2 flies I used were the carp maul and the semi-seal leech, depending on where I was at and the clarity of the water. So to begin with here, where it's fairly clear, I know this isn't clear, but it's clearer, I was using the semi-seal leech. So this is a big flat. I was walking out hunting these carp. And again, these aren't real big carp, but this is a cool area to go out and do it. This is like shin deep water. You look and you can kind of see these guys. They move up and down in the water column a little bit. They're eating a lot of damsels this time of year, especially at this place. There's tons of damsels. And so they'll spend a lot of time at the top of the water column. So anyway, quick drag and drop, and I got my first fish of the day on. Pretty good little fight. Again, none of these are real big. Most of them are, 3 to 5 pounds. I did catch a few that were a little bit bigger, but the majority were in that 3 to 5 pound range, with some up around 7. That was really the biggest here. So you can see a handful of tailors right here. So I had originally targeted the one in the front, and for some reason it just didn't react at all. So I switched and tried this one in the back. There was 2 kind of coming in. My leader was long enough that I could cast to the back one. The thing you might run into in that situation is you can line that front one as you bring it through. Fortunately, this one came forward right there. I saw the little bit of change, assumed that was a eat, and sure enough it was. And again, another decent little fish. Gave me a couple good little runs. To begin with, it kind of came in towards me because I don't think it realized it was hooked. Sometimes they do that, and I'm like, what are we doing here? Before it tore off, and then right there gave me a pretty good little run. Went from right next to me out to about 70 feet fairly quickly. So it was a pretty good little fighter. Again, probably in the 5 pound range, and none of these were real big, but great fish and a great environment. These big shallow areas like this in reservoirs, especially if you get the weeds down, are just awesome. So again here, and if this doesn't look like a flat in the Bahamas, I don't know what does. So I got this fish right here. Been watching it tail, sneak in on it real slow till I get in position to make a good cast on it. And I made a good cast and it turned the other way. And you'll notice kind of the side cast there that I'm doing. That's what I did there to try to get it in. And there's some pretty strong wind. So I kind of had to whip it in there, probably a little bit harder than I wanted to do. And it worked out. So this was a cool one too. I could see it from a long ways away tailing, and it felt a lot like a bonefish stocked in on it. And then again, not an explosion right away, but ended up giving me a pretty good fight. And that was something that a lot of these ones did, which was, I don't know, sometimes they do that. Sometimes they'll explode away right away. These ones seem to not fight super hard until they got close, and then they give you a good hard run. And then usually that was about it. And I think that might be a little bit due to water, the oxygen in the water, which if you look at all these fish right here, these are all fish right at the surface. These fish, what we think they're doing is they're actually gasping for air because there's not enough air in this water. But you can see where I did the drag and drop there right next to that group. I've had people ask me that before. If you see carp just sitting on the surface, sucking at the surface, can you get them to eat? They're not really eating if they're sitting there sucking at the surface. But what I try to do in that situation is exactly what I did there, is I cast to the edge of them and I drag the fly across. Now, this is a great spot to try dry flies where you cast it dry and then you sink it. This one was pretty cool because you can see how much bigger this fish is than the rest of them. This is one of the bigger ones of the day. And you'll see these big groups like this. Carp like to school up. And so I was going to fish for that group, and then I saw him come and break off. Actually, it's probably a female, but I saw her come break off, and then I did a little drag and drop here, right there. You can see her turn and chase it down, and he actually rose in the water column a little bit. I mean, that's classic damsel eat, so pretty awesome. But what I was saying before is that these fish that sit on the top and gasp like this, if you do a dry fly and drag it next to them, or an unweighted fly, which is what I was doing here, an unweighted semi-seal leech, and drag it next to them, a lot of times you can get their attention. They'll drop just under the surface and then chase it down and eat it. Now, they're not going to chase things real far. Also, the geese here were pretty cool. I don't know, I had 3 geese follow me around. One of them actually ended up getting up on my sup at one point. Yeah, I don't know. Enjoyed the show, I guess. But so again, here you can see I've got this big group of fish here. These mostly are gasping, but they drop below a little bit and move around. And I could tell when they were dropping below to move a little bit after they were gasping at the surface that they were eating. And so that's when I would present to them. And there's not a lot of research on if these fish like this are stressed extra by getting caught. I don't know if there was, and that data was out there and said I shouldn't be fishing for them like this. I wouldn't be. These fish are probably a little overpopulated here anyway. Anyway, I'm not trying to justify it. I just, if they're in a pond or something like, and they're doing this, they typically will try to oxygenate that water. If it's koi or something like that, and carp and koi are very closely related, so they act a lot the same. Anyway, I don't know. You don't see it a lot, but you do see it sometimes. This is obviously a place where you can see it a lot. In fact, a big chunk of the rest of this is these carp that are in these schools, gasping at the top, and then they go under and eat a little bit. And I'm using basically the same technique on all of these. A cast, trying to put it just to the edge of them. Over the top, you're typically going to scare them, but if you put it just to the edge and run it along the edge of these groups with a little bit of a drag just underneath the surface, you can see them come off of it. That one right there kind of shot out of the group and came over and ate it. And you want to get their attention just a little bit by dragging it by them. And I really think it's a reaction strike. They think it's a damsel or something, and they will give you a little bit of a chase. Again, where these are smaller fish versus, some of the places I go where I'm catching 10 plus or even sometimes 20 plus pound fish. Those ones don't tend to chase things down as much as these more juvenile fish, these 3-pounders, 4-pounders, 5-pounders. These ones do tend to be more aggressive, more opportunistic in that way. They'll chase things down, where the bigger ones will dig things out and spend more time doing that. So it does make for a fun change of pace. Right now, most of the places where I'd like to chase bigger fish are pretty much unfishable because, like I said, the water's all up in trees and weeds, high weeds, where these carp, they're just disappearing into these weeds, and you might be able to pick a couple up in the margins, but it's very difficult fishing right now, very difficult to see them. So this was a nice place to go that's a little bit different and still created a great opportunity to catch a bunch of fish. And I caught a ton of fish. I don't know what my numbers were today, but it was a lot of fish. Did extremely well all day. Most of the day I was fishing in areas like this where we had these big schools, and then I was fishing the edges of those. After the one big flat I fished, and I kind of fished that one out. It's not a huge area, but was able to catch a couple fish off that big flat, and then I just kind of hunted around this reservoir looking for these kind of fish. And then at the end of the day, I ended up in the kind of where the creek comes into this reservoir, very muddy area. I was able to pick up a couple more and even one on a dry fly. But yeah, just a great day. A lot of different ways to approach these fish. But I think this, again, is a great example of how you can go after these fish sitting right at the surface and still be successful. They usually do eat if they're up doing this, especially when you got a big group like this. There's going to be a couple in the group that are willing to eat. So just don't try to cast it right on them. Cast next to them, a little bit of a drag to get their attention, and you can catch a lot of fish doing this. And I did extremely well with this approach. But I'm going to be quiet there because it's going to be a lot of rinse and repeat from here. Appreciate you guys watching, and have some more content coming out. Fall season should start picking up significantly. I'll start getting into some more bigger fish again. I love the fall. So we'll talk to you guys soon.